You're listening to the Business Communicators, presented by IABC Houston. And now your hosts, Austin Stetton, Hattie Horn, and Thomas Bain.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 13 of the Business Communicators, a podcast presented by IABC Houston. My name is Austin Stetton, joined alongside my co-host Hattie Horn and Thomas Bain on this chilly Monday morning in Houston. It's below 32 degrees, and Thomas, I know you're always talking about the weather, and I think it's finally justified, especially after the Black Friday that we had in Houston with J.J. Watt announcing that he has been released from the Houston Texans on his social media platform. So, Thomas, give us a weather update. And Hattie, it's great to see you again this week on the podcast.
You know, at some point in time, I think that we need to be sponsored by one of the tourisms of Houston or anything like that. And we can complain about how cold it is. But our listeners up in Canada, they're like, this is nothing. But be safe out there. Last week, there was a mega accident in Fort Worth, just people driving too fast on ice. My heart goes out to all of those people. So we say think before you tweet, think while you drive, think before you drive. That's going to be my weather update. Nothing else. Just please be responsible, be safe. Even though we're in COVID, work from home if you can work from home.
And stay warm. I mean, if when it's this cold, I'm not going outside. Like, period.
Well, this is the thing with those folks. If you think about it, they were sliding on black ice,
right?
Regardless of what they're doing. One thing about Texans, we still don't know how to drive, whether it's raining, whether it's sleeting, whether it's snowing.
Or sunny.
We've not gotten as good at it. So this is 20 cars or more?
100.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Between 77 and 100.
Pray for, those families that is a lot. That's a lot. And it's amazing how one person making the wrong turn or swerve or whatever, boom, boom, boom. And I've actually been in a 6-car pile up on 610. So very, very cold in Houston, coming over that little hump of 610 to get on the Northwest Freeway, sliding down that little thing, could not stop, slid right into another car behind me, boom, boom, boom.
Ooh.
So, by the grace of God, I'm still here.
We're glad that you're still here.
Thank you.
It's so important that you're here, part of the podcast, Hattie. It wouldn't.
But that ice ain't playing in Houston when it's cold and we don't know how to drive on ice.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay safe, stay inside, listen to the podcast, share the podcast with a friend, to stay warm. We're providing you with hot takes all episode long. So hopefully that will keep you warm as well. But you guys probably all saw the news on Friday. And for those that aren't from Houston, J.J. Watt is probably one of the best football players in franchise history, probably one of the best defensive linemen in NFL history. He helped raise $37 million for Hurricane Harvey relief back in 2017. And with the, issues going on with the Houston Texans, Jamie Roots, who was president and joined us on the podcast in December, he resigned this week. And J.J. Watt decided that he wanted to talk with the Texans and see if they could release him. And I thought it was interesting. Instead of the Texans sitting out a press release or having a press conference, JJ wanted to do it on his own terms and announce it on his social media channels. I thought that was an interesting move.
Well, he has that kind of pull or power as far as I'm concerned. And I'm glad that he was able to control it. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I love that they had that kind of respect for him, that they allowed him to do it. Let's see if they have that kind of respect for other people who want to take that route as well.
Are you referring to a Deshaun Watson by chance?
A certain quarterback, maybe?
I call no names. I'm just saying, if you do it for one, make sure you have that same respect for everyone else, okay? Because, sometimes... Anyway, I'm not going to go there.
Absolutely. But I think the Texans were willing to cut him already from the start because mega salary cap hits, getting up there in his career while he's still extremely effective. But he wants to play for a Super Bowl contender. He needs to play for a Super Bowl contender. He deserves to play for a Super Bowl contender. And the Super Bowl contenders, there's really like 3 teams that come to the top of my mind. 2 of them played a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And they don't need a defensive end, especially with that salary cap. But again, I think the Texans did a solid by letting him do it on his terms, because he's a very effective communicator in his social media channels. He is, for lack of a better statement, Mr. Houston Texans. And I really just hope that when he finally does retire, that he retires in the Houston area, just because he means so much for it, raising $100 million plus for Harvey. And, just being really the voice of the franchise into the NFL and voice of outside of it. So kudos to him. I'd love to see him come back and do one of those one-day contracts and retire as a Houston Texan. And I don't know. I hope it's me.
Well, we aren't going to speak much more on football on this podcast. We do have a great episode coming up. We're going to discuss some rebranding news that has taken the communications world by storm. The Lincoln Project, which has been under hot water over the past few days, surrounding some Twitter controversies and some sexual harassment controversies. And I think that's really important from the political and communications world. But before we get into all that, if you want to follow us on social media, you can just search @BizCommunicator on all of the social media platforms. We're there. You can also text podcast to 713-360-0133, and we'll send you text updates as we release episodes, or we have good guests, or we want your feedback, things of that nature. If you want to send us feedback, we prefer that you do it on an iTunes 5-star review, but you can always email us to podcast@IBC Houston. And of course, I want to thank our sponsors, Pierpont Communications and Mykrantz & Co., for helping make this show possible. But guys, on Friday, I guess Thursday night, there was some major news that came out with the Lincoln Project. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Lincoln Project, it was created by former Republicans back in 2019 who consider themselves never Trumpers. And if you look at their, founding members, it's Jennifer Horn, Rick Wilson, George Conway, whose wife was, Trump's #1 spokesperson really in the White House, Steve Schmidt, John Weaver, Reed Galen, Ron Steslow, and Mike Madrid. Again, founded in 2019 as sort of a think tank that was going after President Trump and trying to make sure that he wasn't reelected in 2020. And so far in 2021, that group has come under hot water. And for just additional background, over the summer, John Weaver, one of their co-founders of the Lincoln Project, really came under fire for sexually harassing and grooming young men in really, a disgusting manner. And ultimately, the Lincoln Project decided that they were going to separate themselves from Mr. Weaver. And most recently, a lot of reporters have been kind of digging into the Lincoln Project, looking into the financial practices. And on last Thursday night, there was a really, really interesting case from Jennifer Horn. And Jennifer Horn, one of the female co-founders, she had been engaging with a reporter, actually. And the Lincoln Project hacked into her account, shared some screen caps of DMs that she had had with reporter Amanda Becker. And Amanda Becker is the Washington correspondent for the 19th News. She spent time with Reuters before. But it kind of raises the ethical question. I think it's incredibly wrong, possibly illegal, to hack into someone's direct messages and share them on social media, on your accounts, to try to elevate your brand or to smear somebody. And a lot of people have actually been calling for Twitter and Jack Dorsey to take action. But Twitter said on Friday, according to a tweet from Yashar Ali, that it didn't violate their terms and services. I'm curious on y'all's take on this whole situation, and I'm just trying to put my head around it right now.
Twitter makes a pretty big stand saying that they're not going to publish or allow anything to be published that was captured illegally. The fact that they're coming out saying that this is not illegal content makes me think that they actually had access to the account or the DMs beforehand. But, kind of glancing through them about off the record, we all work in communications. We know that nothing's off the record. The only private conversation that you can have is in person with no notes being taken. In today's world, yes, you have some level of anonymity with your phone where you need warrants to listen and wiretaps and those kind of things. but one party can be listening to, if I have a call with Hattie and, you know, Hattie's recording it in Texas, that's legal. And so I think that's really there. She's a founder of the organization, and she's trying to engage in the smear campaign. Really makes me wonder that there's some other stuff, for lack of a better statement.
You know, first of all, Jennifer Horn, no relation to me. It's her personal account.
Yeah.
Which was created before the actual Lincoln Project.
A decade before.
A decade before. So even though she is a co-founder, the actual Lincoln Project doesn't have its own actual, if they have their own Twitter account, and if she was DMing from there or something like that, then I kind of have it. I think that would be an issue, but this is her personal account, which is a bigger issue. I kind of see some sabotage going on.
Yeah.
Undermining.
Yeah. And one of the issues that I have is that Jennifer Horn allegedly resigned because of the scandal with John Weaver, the sexual assault, the sexual harassment. It was a huge dark cloud for the Lincoln Project, you know, and I think they've been kind of skirting on the ethical lines, and a lot of people have been trying to give them a pass just because they were going after Trump, and they were successful at what they did. But if you look at the financial side of things, I mean, they've been under fire for the last 6 to 8 months on just lining their pockets and getting so much money in donations. The video work and the campaign work they did was phenomenal, but it's the ethical side of things that kind of bother me. And so the Lincoln Project actually went after her 7 days ago, like a week ago, after she announced that her resignation, you know, trying to discuss contract talks, some of her demands, you know, her salary request, her signing bonus request. And so that's where the reporter actually reached out to her and had these conversations. And I just think it looks so bad on the male co-founders of the organization who are already under hot water and have already put a smear campaign against her, to go one step further and release her direct messages on Twitter. I don't know how they got them, you know, even if it was part of her contract that, you know, she had to turn over access to her Twitter for, you know, 1 month after resignation, 1 year after resignation, whatever that might be. It looks pretty bad when the only woman on your board, the only co-founder that was a woman, you're going after her like this on social media and attacking her in a public forum. I don't think that's going to help your cause nor your credibility.
No, but you're also looking at that's like good old boys club.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
At the same time, I don't know whether she signed a contract that you turn this over, whatever you say, or you have some sort of understanding about the type of conversations you have or how you represent Lincoln Project on your Twitter. But like you said, I do agree that there's some level of sabotage or some where these guys who are under fire for, and it also looks like it could be a distraction. Let's deflect. Let's get this off of me. So we're gonna do this to her and see if we can amplify the BS around her. But this Weaver guy, I was reading the article about him, the allegations against him, the screenshots of what the conversations or the engagement that he was having with these individuals. And it is clearly, in my mind, an abuse of power.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yes.
And the old dude really was taking advantage of these young people, and he was using, you know, his privilege, he was using his power to advocate for himself or to, you know, make it work for him. Now that in itself is just so horrible. So who knows what's going to happen next with this group? I think it's done for.
I really think it's done for. And we look at some numbers that the AP put out last year, and it said that the Lincoln Project has raised $90 million since its inception. Mm-hmm. And its whole purpose was to go after Trump, but only 27 million of that was spent on TV and online advertisements. So where did the rest of the money go to? Did it line the pockets of these co-founders? I mean, I think it's a brilliant move from them to capitalize on people, you know, not wanting Trump in office and then being able to say, hey, look, we're ex-Republican strategists. We don't think that, Trump identifies with Republican politics and ideals. Let's go after him. But man, 90 million raised and only 27 million goes in advertising. Where did the rest of it go? And I think that's where the trust factor comes in. We spoke with Tonya Reese from Edelman, and she talked about trust in political and how it's so low in the United States and really across the globe. And I think this just goes to show why that's the case. And so not only do you have the financial element, but you have covering up the sexual harassment from one of their co-founders. And then 3, it's appearing like they're going after one of their co-founders because she's speaking out against them. So to me, that's 3 strikes. I think they're out.
Austin, we know that production for quality video editing and quality design and paying people to buy the ads is expensive. 100%. I don't know about $60 million expensive, but it's expensive.
I do agree there was no checks and balances in place. And unless they paid for a Super Bowl ad, which would have cost them in the area of millions of dollars. Yeah, where is that money? What are you doing with it? The stewardship behind it is not there. So, and then 2, did people demand to know, hey, we just assume that you're doing the right thing. We're gonna give you this money because we know you're gonna get this guy out, but we're not holding you accountable.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head there, Hattie, by saying holding accountable. If you look at some of the out replies on Yashar Ali's tweet, and if you're not familiar with Yashar, he's an amazing Twitter follower. Twitter follow. He used to work for Governor Newsom in California. He's been really plugged in on the political side, the Democrat side, for years. I would consider him pretty. I mean, he's definitely leans left, but he's one that listens to both sides and speaks, I think, the truth. I think he's one of the most credible journalists out there, and he's not really your standard journalist. I mean, he's done freelance work for a lot of publications, but he's broken a lot of news via his Substack newsletter, which I think is just absolutely incredible, and I think he does great work. Mm-hmm. But you look at some of the replies to the tweet, and it's a lot of people trying to defend the Lincoln Project and say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because they helped get Trump out of office. Yeah, that's true, but
to some extent,
exactly.
But they weren't by themselves.
Exactly. And I do think that accountability needs to be something that is out there. And accountability is something that's out there for all nonprofits, all 501c3s. That's why you have so many organizations that have to be transparent on where that money is going, right? So if you donate to, I don't know, a American Heart Association or something like that, you can go onto their website, or you can go to third-party websites that will show you a percentage of what goes to the actual charitable organization for, fighting a disease, fighting a certain cause. And then, of course, there is going to be overhead, right? Mm-hmm. You do have to pay salaries, that you have to pay, the electricity,
operating costs.
Yeah, operation costs. But when you see 92 million raised, 27 million used, that's a delta of what, $60+ million. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It doesn't add up.
Again, there needs to be that level of transparency. There needs to be hey, trust us, this is what we're doing. And I from the founders, I get the impression that there's also another one of their ways to have another source of income, for lack of a better statement. I sit on the board of this organization and they pay me X number of dollars to do it. I don't agree with it at all, by any stretch of the imagination, just because that's just me on the personality side of it. And I want to see them do good, all 401(c)(3)Bs, all nonprofit organizations.
Yeah.
But it does bring up a good point, Austin, to your point about they're getting a pass because they were working on getting Trump out of office, and there was 70 something million people that worked to get Trump out of office as well. But you believe the facts that you want to believe. So, they're doing good, so it doesn't matter what they're doing. And you could put out they could be clubbing baby seals. Not advocating that either, but then people are like, oh, they're doing good, even though that's right there. So that's I
think you were trying to go for the "Thank You for Smoking" reference for that great movie.
Not smoking, yeah,
Thank You for Not Smoking, back in the early 2000s, about the only thing worse than the Merchants of Death is clubbing baby seals.
Possibly.
It's really interesting.
It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Well, it's interesting what Thomas was saying, that people gave them money and they did this and they did that. Okay, they said they were doing certain things. They gave you the illusion, and they gave you a little bit of visual. They gave you the promotions to lead people to believe, okay, this is what's happening by the scenes. They probably did a third, if that was like, what, a third of that money.
Mm-hmm.
And as for the rest of, because people were happy about what they saw, they didn't think about it anymore. They were like, oh, yep, this is happening. See that ad right there? See that promo right there? And just happy little seals clapping. Yes, yes, yes. And that money was just going in their pocket or doing whatever it was doing. But one of the things that they did not have, I don't believe, and you tell me if this is true, did they have a separate objective group of people who kept them transparent, kept them accountable, kept them honest about what they were doing?
I don't know the ins and outs of the Lincoln Project, so I don't know that it would be fair for me to comment. But if you just look at some of the resignations that have happened in the past 6 months, I mean, George Conway stepping down, I believe last August, and then, Ms. Horn stepping down just over a week ago, and then the scandal with Mr. Weaver. And you look at some of the allegations that apparently the Lincoln Project knew about this last June and denied and said that they never received anything, but there's email records. It seems like they were just looking out for number one, and they just pulled the turned a blind eye to everything was going on because they knew what they were doing was lining their pockets.
I would love to be a fly on the wall when The View and asked Meghan McCain anything about it, because Weaver worked for her father at one time. So that would be interesting conversation.
We do think this is going to be an interesting case study to follow moving forward, especially with the fallout and how it impacts Twitter, because Twitter has been under fire for a long time, especially with banning Trump from Twitter, but then still allowing dictators who kill people, put them in death camps, allowing them on social media. So I think it's going to be an interesting case study to look at, specifically with regards to Twitter. Like, how does this weigh into Twitter, its reputation long-term for standing up for men who were clearly doing something wrong, at least unethical. It might not be illegal, but I do think it's unethical. And going after a woman, I don't see any upside for Twitter in this case, and I think it's going to be interesting to follow.
Yeah, they're a contradiction. We'll see what happens.
I think the fallout's going to be really interesting. And what else happened last week on Twitter and Instagram was Robert Kennedy wound up getting himself banned. I don't know if he got himself banned for vaccination tweets or anything like that. And before the show, Hattie and I were talking about it. And I think he was misquoted. Hattie, you want to help fill me in a little bit more as the conversation we were talking about?
I was looking on a CNN article that said that he was banned and for allegedly being anti-vaccine. But if you read into it, it's saying that he's not anti-vaccine. He believes in the vaccine. Even his children are vaccinated. He was saying he wanted to be safe. And he was saying that people should have the option, if they wanted, to opt out of vaccinating their children if they wanted to. That's all he was saying. He didn't say anti-vaccine.
Well,
in his words, there are a lot of people out there who do not have their children vaccinated and who don't believe in vaccines. And that's just another thing. Whether you believe in it or not, he was just speaking up for those folks' rights.
I think if the stat is 1 in 6 adults doesn't believe in vaccines, but I will say that Kennedy has posted some dangerous things on his social media account. The Associated Press said that in late January, he described the COVID vaccines that are currently being administered in the US as posing, quote, a potential danger despite studies of tens of thousands of people that have found no serious side effects. He's also pushed the conspiracy theory that vaccines may cause autism, although scientific studies both here and abroad have found no evidence at all linking vaccines to, the developmental disorder. And then you look, just a little bit further, Last Monday, actually, Facebook launched a worldwide campaign to combat COVID-19 vaccine misinformation. I believe they poured in something like $120 million worth of ad credits that is going to combat misinformation surrounding coronavirus and COVID-19 vaccines. They've got a huge reach of 2 billion people all around the globe, and they're putting in $120 million of advertising to try to inform people on vaccine eligibility, safety, relevant health updates. And I don't honestly mind removing someone who's putting out dangerous claims. Like, I understand there's the whole free speech argument in the United States, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these social media platforms, you don't have First Amendment rights with them. You can't say whatever you want. I mean, free speech only takes you so far, but when you're dealing with someone else's business, you don't have these free speech rights.
After Twitter banned President Trump, and now, banning Kennedy, and they're under a whole lot of hot water, a ton of hot water from just about every political government in the world, saying, how much influence do you really have? And so seeing them start to ban, again, to Austin's point, I'm for it. Wikipedia does a great job of actually getting the information right. They've actually proven that it's more accurate than Encyclopedia Britannica back in the day. And so I think that the mass population is good for doing the research and saying this is right or wrong. But I get the feeling $120 million for ad credit, that's what, 10 minutes worth of work for them. I'm starting to get the feeling that they're trying to do all this to take the government off of their backs. And is this the fox guard in the hen house at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, Twitter is in such a tough position, especially around the globe. Obviously, Twitter is banned in China. But we look at other countries that are democracies, borderline democracies, and how much government influence is trying to weigh into Twitter. And again, Twitter is a publicly traded business, right? They have to turn a profit. They have to keep users in line. But we look at, India, for example. The New York Times reported this week that there's, protests going on with farmers in India opposing new agricultural laws. And the Indian government is citing its laws against subversion or threats to public order. And they actually demanded that Twitter delete or hide more than 1,000 accounts. And the Indian government's claim is that they're spreading violence or misinformation. And a lot of people have said, well, that's not quite true, but Twitter is complying with the Indian government to remove these accounts. And so it's, I know that these social media companies want to try to stay away from politics as much as possible. But, in the last 15 years, we've seen these social media apps, which used to be about sharing. I mean, look at Facebook. When I joined Facebook back in 2005, you could only connect with people at your university. That's it. And then it's grown to something where people are sharing memes, sharing misinformation, sharing their personal agendas. And now it's being used to silence critics or people that have dissenting opinions in countries all over the world. And so, I mean, at what point does Twitter just give up? Because I don't know that there's an upside for Twitter and all of this.
I agree with you on that. There is an upside. Like you said, when these social media platforms were first rolled out, they were rolled out for specific reasons. And they also knew that they were going to generate revenue by these ads where you're promoting, whether it's a lot of marketing or whatever, to get people to pay to do things. But it was also a way for people to interact with people, socialize with people, meet people from anywhere around the world. They cannot always guard everything that people say. And the minute somebody says something that a government or something completely disagrees with, they're going to hit on the social platform. Hey, you got to shut this down because this is dangerous. It flies in the face of everything that we stand for as a country or as a government. And so we're demanding that you do that. I agree also that these social platforms have to make money, but they also are responsible for having policies in place that ensure people are not erroneously, violated, killed, because social media has done so much. You've got human trafficking over social media, in addition to all the government issues. And as for the issue in India, I think they're afraid of what happened in the US is going to happen to them. And so they're trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're starting to see now like emerging social media platforms that are going through similar controversies. I mean, we look at Clubhouse. Clubhouse is a audio drop-in app that was founded in 2020 by two Silicon Valley guys, Paul Davison and Rohan Seth. Rohan worked at Google. Paul Davison worked at Pinterest, Google, and a bunch of other tech companies. And that social media app, if you're not familiar with Clubhouse, I think it's going to be the app of 2021. It was originally valued at like $100 million. Most recently, with their latest round of like investments, I think it's valued at over $1 billion. I think as of the time that we're recording this episode, I believe they have over 6 million active weekly users. And a lot of that shot up because Elon Musk joined a live Clubhouse drop-in audio back in late January. I think before that it was like 2 million, but really quickly on Clubhouse. So it's an app, it's only available on iPhone right now. I would kind of describe it as like a mix between TED Talk, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and maybe a podcast. So you can basically plug in your interests. So you can do sports, you can do politics, you can do pop culture, technology, stock market, anything you want. And you open the app and you can see which rooms are going right now. And I can join a room. I can listen to the moderators discuss. I can raise my hand. I can be brought up to the stage to share my opinion, ask questions. But there's been a lot of controversy surrounding Clubhouse for two reasons. One, a lack of moderation on the website. You know, there's been a lot of misinformation. They recently just opened it up to China, and a lot of Chinese users have come on and started to try to discredit coronavirus and the origins of the virus in the United States. So you've got basically the Chinese government putting propaganda on the app, and there's no moderation there. Another controversy that you have is apparently reporters are actually being blocked from joining a lot of these rooms. Taylor Lewins, who is the technology reporter for the New York Times, has been very vocal about this in the last 2 weeks, specifically following the Elon Musk interview. We've reached out to her to try to get her on the podcast to discuss this more in depth. And then another is Clubhouse only has 9 employees. They're valued at over $1 billion. I believe around 60% of their users are Black. And so there's a lot of concern that these two founders are exclusively trying to be able to create an app and say that, look, we've got this huge audience of Black Americans, and we're going to try to flip that and profit off of it. So there's been a lot of controversy in that space as well. But I do think it's a very interesting platform. And of course, Hattie, I mentioned this in our text thread the other day. Any interesting social media app that comes out, Facebook tries to copy it, and Facebook's trying to copy it. So needless to say, it's tough to create a social media app with so many different controversies going on, whether it's censorship, whether it's moderation, whether it's, trying to prop up groups for your own financial benefit.
I see it more as a self-selected happy hour, because the times I've jumped in there and listened to them, it's okay, who do I want to network? Who do I want to talk to? Who do I want to listen to? What topics do I want to hear? And it's just the random conversation. I think another thing that you mentioned, Austin, you mentioned Facebook as well, is the exclusivity of it, meaning that you have to be invited. You have to apply, and then you have to be invited to get onto it. It's very similar to what Facebook did when they were first starting off, is you had to have a university account. And there's the famous story of they wanted to be at University of Texas. And so they went to Baylor and they went to Texas State, Southwest Texas, to kind of force UT's hand into allowing them on campus. And to your point, Austin, is why start something in these times? But copycatting is the most sincere form of flattery. Last week, a dating app went public for a whole lot of money. That was a spinoff of another dating app.
Well, if you have the majority, you just said 60% of the users are Black, then yeah, you are capitalizing on a specific audience. That's a given, because what they're saying is that Black users have made the app much more than what it is. They have innovated new ways for using the app. In other words, you're capitalizing on the creativeness of certain people to grow your business and to make money. But that's how businesses have been done for so long. Anyway,
and
So
will continue to be done.
And they're not doing anything different. It's just that we, as a culture, have to learn how to make that work for us, because we're at the bottom of the rung when it comes to making money off of some of these things and growing and thriving. If you choose to allow people or companies or whatever to use your creativity, you better get something out of it.
And that's a tough thing too, because you look at like TikTok, for example, like you can monetize your content on TikTok. You can monetize your content on podcasts. You can monetize on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can't really do that.
Exactly.
You can't really do that right now on Clubhouse, right? I mean, you can link your social pages, and I have actually contacted several people from Clubhouse that I've met on there from like the PR communication side. You know, we've exchanged DMs, had conversations that way. So I do think it can help from like a professional networking perspective, but there's also not really a monetization side of it.
I think the statement, if you think the platform is free, you're the product, is still ringing true. It is that it's up to all of us as society, to Hattie's point, that if we're going on there and we're sharing our knowledge to make hopefully the world a better place, somebody's going to profit off of it unless we're doing it on our terms.
I think that's why protecting your personal brand is incredibly important. If you are going to engage on these social media platforms, make sure that your brand is clean. Make sure that you are very open about what you do, how people can contact you, how they can find you, how they can learn more about you. Because I think that's so important. It's the same thing with LinkedIn, right? I mean, look at Clubhouse, similar to LinkedIn, except LinkedIn, you're just sharing articles, you're sharing your thoughts. Clubhouse, you're doing that live. And so people, if you share something that's intelligent, they can click on your profile when you're speaking, look at it, they can follow you, they can connect with you on Twitter, Instagram, you know, they can email you. I do think it has upside, but you gotta monetize it. You gotta look after yourself and use it as a networking tool. But I also do think it's fun to just hop in a room and hear some of the conversations that are going on. But again, as some of the controversies that are out there, there's sometimes bullying on the platform. There's sometimes lack of moderation. But at the end of the day, that's happening on all social media platforms. And I don't know that there's a solution for that.
Well, they're going to have to figure out something before it gets too far out of hand. You see what happened with social media on January the 6th.
Yeah. We've got the impeachment hearings going on right now in the US.
So now but it's sad how we have to wait till something horrible happens before we decide to try to create a solution around it. But at least it gets it on the forefront of trying to create a solution. And you're right about brand itself. If you've got a brand and that's unique, that people want to be a part of, or they're going to be loyal to it, you're going to have to be not only transparent, you're going to be accountable, yet monetize it, all of those things. Because I love how it says Clubhouse has done an incredible job of embracing the Black community as investors in the platform and helping us build a community.
Well, they're not financial investors.
No.
I know.
They're just investing their time. That's all.
Yes. That's why I would say it's investing their time. They've even created little rooms called the Founders, a group known as the Black Founders Club on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
So either way it goes, Clubhouse is benefiting big time.
Yeah.
Hattie, if you got it, put it out there.
Hattie, we need to get you an iPhone so you can join, and then we could start like the podcast on Clubhouse. That would be
the business communicators on podcasts. But they were targeting influencers, so that makes me wonder if there wasn't some sort of financial back and forth from there.
There was probably some equity stake. I mean, we mentioned that. Probably episode 5 or episode 6 with David Dobrik and his puzzle that he had coming out, and how influencers, maybe the next move for 2021 is equity stakes in these small businesses. I mean, that could be it with Clubhouse. I mean, TikTok paid David Dobrik to come over to use the platform. Triller is bringing the D'Amelio sisters over, D'Amelio family. I mean, it's all about money.
Exactly. But
there you go. Bottom line, green.
You mentioned branding and companies starting off, and I'm always a good fan of a good rebranding story. And so this one,
I'm curious where this is going to go, Thomas.
was going to talk about the Pearl Milling Company.
Awful name.
Oh, it sounds so sexy. Makes me want to go out and buy it. Ooh, what is it?
It's too clunky.
It's a whole lot of stuff. So that the Pearl Milling Company is now, or Aunt Jemima is now the Pearl Milling Company. The whole changing of your brands that invoked wrong stuff on a right reason. But if you're given a blank slate to rebuild a pancake company, why the Pearl Milling Company?
But they're not a pancake company. They sell more than one product. Come on. I agree that, yeah, you should be rebranded because you were created out of a negative situation. However, when you think about it, and when I read about why they changed it and why they chose the name that they chose, I mean, okay, I wasn't exactly convinced that was the best way to go, but when you talk about rebranding, and we talked about this earlier, rebranding is, why are you doing it? Are you doing it to increase your loyalty or increase your revenue, build this, build that? Okay, so now I'm the Pearl Milling Company. Do you think that's going to inspire more loyalty?
No.
Revenue,
no.
Sales? Do you think it's going to take you some time to get used to that name before you decide to say, let's kick it to the curb? Sure, I'll stick with you. You're Pearl now. You're not Aunt Jemima. So what?
The name's just too clunky. I'm sorry. I know I've said that a lot so far on this podcast.
Well, they
so,
okay. They said they didn't change it, the name, to inspire you by name. They changed it based on the fact that these are the products that we've been selling for hundreds of years. And we know our consumers, and we know.
Do they?
Well, it is Pepsi. PepsiCo owns the Pearl Milling Company now. And they did all their due diligence on the back end of it. Oh, we had a focus group and we did this and we did that. I'm like, yeah, Austin's point, it's too clunky. If you watch the movie Founder about Ray Kroc and the McDonald's brothers, he said the reason y'all are so successful is because of the name McDonald's.
But McDonald's doesn't connotate a racial stereotype.
No. I'm agreeing that Aunt Jemima's name should have been changed. I'm just saying that if you're given a blank slate to rebrand something completely, why that one?
So it's interesting that you guys mentioned rebranding. I actually looked up some companies that have gone through major rebrands over the last 20 years. And of course you see some like Walmart moving from like Wal-Mart to just Walmart, Starbucks going from Starbucks coffee to Starbucks. But I was interested in like the cost of some of these rebrands and how much some of these companies paid. And actually Logo Creative had a story. I think they're based out of the UK. This was probably, about a year or two ago. They had some valuations on the most expensive rebrands. Semantic Brand and Acquisition cost $1.28 billion for their rebrand. A company that Hattie and I used to work for, BP, their rebrand, when they switched from British Petroleum to BP and the Helios, that cost $210 million. That is an insane amount of money. Accenture, their logo, my fiance works there. $100 million for that logo design. It's just incredible. But then you start, to go down that list. Citibank is at like 1.5 million. Pepsi's logo, 1 million. The London Olympics logo in 2012 was just over $600,000. And then you keep on scrolling and scrolling. Two more surprises. I'm going to give you guys a guess. The Nike logo. It's probably one of the most recognizable brands, one of the most recognizable logos in the entire world. How much do you think that cost?
Go ahead, Hattie.
Let's play Price is Right. Price is Right. Give me your bid.
$2 million.
Thomas?
$1. No, it's $500 because it was a college kid friend who kind of did it on the back of a napkin, and he said, "I want to buy this off of you." I think it was $500. It might be even lower than that.
So I think your $1 bid would have won. You did go over. The Nike logo cost $35.
Yeah,
and it was rebranded several times. Then Nike made it what it is today. But I just think it's fascinating that you can spend upwards of $1 billion on a logo like Semantic. I think if you were to ask anyone listening to this podcast, like what Semantic's logo looks like, nobody would have a clue. The brands that are recognizable around the world, like Nike, McDonald's, Burger King, they're not
Starbucks.
spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on logos. Maybe rebrands, yes, but they've already got iconic logos where people recognize and understand them. But it just goes to show you that you can create a great logo and not overspend. So I would encourage you, if you're creating a business logo, don't spend over $1 million. You can get something great at a reasonable rate.
And I'm going to
Well,
say that
this
if you're a
is the thing.
rebrand company or a logo company, we're open for sponsorships. We have listeners all over the world. We don't charge anywhere near $1 billion yet. You can email Austin.
Logo is just a part of your brand. Brand is really about what you promise to deliver.
Yeah.
And one thing you will say about Nike, they created that look and it sustained them for so long because they have delivered time and time again.
It's iconic.
Getting back, well, yeah. Everybody knows. I mean, and even McDonald's. Do you know the first word some kids learn? They know that golden arches. They know the point. McDonald's.
I believe there's like a report that came out. It said that the two most recognizable symbols in the world were the cross and the McDonald's logo.
The golden arches.
Yep.
But in reality, that's when you made it as a company.
Well, you deliver. You made a promise and you delivered on that promise. I will say this, going back to Aunt Jemima or the Pearls Milling Company, the products that they have delivered over time have always been very good. So I don't care what you call yourself. I'm glad you're not Aunt Jemima anymore. But if your product is still good and it's delicious, yeah, I'm gonna buy it.
And in their defense, looking at the color schematics and the background pictures, it's the same red, it's the same yellow. You're walking down the endless aisles of pancake batter or syrup. You're going to kind of pick it up out of the corner of your eye as the same. It's just the name.
But if it tastes horrible, I don't care
Absolutely.
what you look like.
100%. But I will say this, we do have a lot of Canadian listeners. I think it's like 10-15% of our listeners are from Canada. If you want to send us some maple syrup from Canada, just hit us up, send us a DM. We'll definitely sample your favorite products.
And I'll do a
could
review.
be a fun episode. We could do a review. Yeah, I don't know, just spitballing there.
And here's Thomas's random fact for the day, that maple syrup is one of the most counterfeited products in the world.
Interesting.
I saw that at bar trivia a long time ago, and I remember reading about it. I don't know if it still is, but at one point in time, it was one of the largest counterfeit products in the world. So, but I'm on with Austin's chain. Send us your favorite products. We'll talk about it on the podcast and enjoy some pancakes.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it's been a lot of fun, discussing everything that's been going on this week. I feel like it's been an incredibly busy week for communications, marketing, and just everything that's going on in the world, on social media, real life events. But yeah, it's been incredibly fascinating, and it's been great to discuss it with both of you over the last hour. And for our listeners out there, if you want to follow our work, be sure to check out Biz Communicator on all the social media platforms. Visit our website, thebusinesscommunicators.com. If you want to give us feedback on how we're doing, we prefer a 5-star review on iTunes. That's the ideal, but feel free to text us feedback. You can just text podcast 713-360-0133 or shoot us an email to podcast@ibchouston.com. Of course, we wouldn't be able to do the show without our sponsors. Thank you to IBC Houston for helping the show get off the ground. And of course, our sponsors, Pierpont Communications and Mykrantz & Co. They do great work here in Houston. So if you need any support, whether it's in Houston or across the globe, they can help you out. But Thomas, Hattie, it's been great. Any parting words before we close this thing out?
I just want to say, I'm looking forward to a great week. And I will say, thank you guys for such a great conversation. We had on some really interesting topics this week. And as always, the conversation's been good.
Of course. It's always great to have you and your laugh, Hattie. I think last week when we posted the Chris Brogan episode, and we posted that soundbite of his on authenticity and thought leadership, what really, really made that clip for me was just your laugh in the background. It's iconic. I love it.
that was a great.
It's funny what he said. He's a funny guy.
It's funny
and he is
true.
just so right about that.
I'm going to echo what Hattie and Austin stated. The conversations we have are always great. The different point of views are always phenomenal. My parting words is for our North American listeners: stay warm, stay inside because it's going to be cold. And as this podcast comes out, enjoy your Valentine's Day. It's going to be a great one. Reach out, love someone, do an act of kindness to your significant other or to just society. And again, to Austin's point, connect with us. Mention us on LinkedIn. We enjoy those conversations. Enjoy us on Twitter. And yeah, have fun.
Well, guys, it's been a great episode. We hope everyone has a good week. And if you're based here in Houston, stay warm. If you want to stay inside and listen to this podcast, we definitely encourage you to do so. Share it with a friend, share it with your cat, share it with your dog, family, grandmother. It doesn't matter. If they want to listen to this podcast, they should listen to this podcast. But on behalf of my co-hosts this week, Hattie Horn and Thomas Bain, my name's Austin Staton, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review.